From frozen Nazi soldiers wandering into the world of sports entertainment to silly attacks on the maternity ward. These are those odd wrestling storylines that fans luckily never had to experience on their screens. So I'm Gareth, this is What Culture Wrestling, and here are 10 ditch wrestling storylines that thankfully never happened. Number 10. Vince McMahon's midlife crisis. Disgraced executive WWE chairman Vince McMahon has booked some of the most absurd and uncomfortable storylines ever to appear in the world of pro wrestling. And he's appeared in most of them, but while the likes of Vinnie Mac forcing Trish Stratus to bark like a dog, and ultimately fighting his own daughter did unfortunately become a very disturbing thing at various points in time, another strange/excruciating McMahon storyline thankfully didn't get past the discussion stage. That's according to former WWE writer Brian Gewirtz, who noted in response to a report last year on WWE quote-unquote discussing The Rock winning the 2023 Royal Rumble before challenging his cousin for the belt, that a number of bizarre ideas had also been quote-unquote discussed during his time with the company, along with Kaval being revealed to be The Undertaker's secret long-lost baby boy. Gewirtz also mentioned how the idea of Vince dealing with a midlife crisis that would have consisted of him growing out a beard, donning Hawaiian shirts, and even warbling along to the Black Eyed Peas was once talked about backstage too. Just take a moment to visualize that image. Fast forward a few years and the fact Vince appears to be dealing with his three-quarter life crisis by sprouting that upper lip monstrosity suddenly makes a little more sense. Number 9. Vladimir Kozlov breaks the streak. Whether you rue the day the Beast Incarnate broke the dead man in New Orleans, or applauded WWE for finally pulling the trigger on the snapping of Taker's legendary streak, most folks will agree that Brock Lesnar was certainly a bloke who could realistically destroy the Phenom on the grandest stage. And when compared to some of the other potential streak breakers that were discussed over the years, this freak of nature definitely felt like the strongest choice in hindsight. There was even a time there when Vince McMahon was genuinely considering handing one-time WWE destroyer turned Tea Party guest Vladimir Kozlov the prestigious honor of being the star to not just engage in a storyline with Taker heading into Mania, but beat him at the Showcase of the Immortals. Mark Calloway himself explained to Ariel Helwani how the Ukrainian-American was someone McMahon had his eye on for Taker's first Mania L, with that idea being floated around likely during the early stages of Kozlov's run. And while such a massive accolade would have no doubt helped make the once intimidating force feel like the real deal, you'll struggle to find many fans who would have preferred seeing the figure who ended up having a dance-off with Santino Marella go down in history as the street killer instead of a former UFC heavyweight champion. But with all this in mind, who do you think should have broken the streak? You let me know in the comment section down below. Number 8. Becky Lynch is attacked in the maternity ward. After stepping away from all things sports entertainment to bring a child into this insane world, Becky Lynch eventually made her shocking return at SummerSlam 2021, taking Bianca Belair's SmackDown Women's Championship away in a matter of seconds. Had the man had it her way though, this WWE icon would have probably popped back up on TV in a far crazier way. As Stephanie McMahon would reveal on the Bill Simmons podcast back in April 2021, Lynch actually pitched the idea of a storyline that would have been kicked off by her being attacked in the maternity ward, presumably not too long after giving birth to a baby. And as Steph would joke, the maternity ward match would have likely been born too. While some may have actually preferred this mad hospital angle as the one that brought the man back around, the alternative of having Lynch wander out as a massive surprise at the biggest party of the summer was probably the wiser move in the end. One that unquestionably produced one of the biggest pops of the post-pandemic era, even if it did result in the EST of WWE being completely embarrassed inside of a packed stadium. Nice one. Number 7. Heidenreich the frozen Nazi soldier. The same character who ended up seemingly sexually assaulting a commentator backstage, delivered uncomfortably intense poems on top of the SmackDown fist, and ultimately cosplayed as a member of the Legion of Doom, somehow almost found himself in the middle of an even more bizarre storyline back in 2004. Back before he showed up alongside Paul Heyman as a Blue Show psychopath, another former WWE writer, Dan Madigan, pitched for the bleach blonde nutter to debut as a Nazi who had been cryogenically frozen. Yep, that's right. Said thawed-out Nazi would have gone by the name of Baron von Bava, with this stormtrooper stepping right out of 1940 to apparently cause chaos in the land of sports entertainment. Think Captain America, but a whole lot more inappropriate and disturbing. Madigan even recalled pitching having Jewish New Yorker Heyman be the one to revive Baron, because he quote-unquote thought it would be a scream to have Paul Lee come down to the ring and introduce Baron von Bava, only to have the Baron come down to the ring goose-stepping and wearing the red swastika around his biceps. Ha 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 ha, so funny. If your idea is capable of making Vince McMahon silently exit a room with a stunned expression on his face, you know you've done something horrifically wrong. Number 6. Jim Neidhart The Mole. From writers firing some utterly perplexing storyline ideas at the madman known as Vince McMahon, to the wrestlers who again felt like they were onto a surreal winner now, and that time when Jake the Snake Roberts felt he had the perfect new character for a certain anvil. As Roberts would explain on his Snake Pit podcast last year, there was a moment when he felt it would be wonderful to see the late Jim Neidhart take on the role of the Mole on WWF programming. In this pitched new direction for Neidhart, the performer would have set up his home underneath the squared circle, with the Mole only deciding to exit the safety of that location once the lights were turned out. And once those lights were off, he would proceed to batter whichever unfortunate soul was in the middle of the ring at that point in time, before the lights were eventually switched back on to reveal him kicking ass. They would have been moled over. I am not sorry. Unsurprisingly, Vince seemingly wasn't convinced by this Mole idea, and thankfully the odd storyline stayed locked away in the Snake's mind instead. Oh yeah, and I just thought I'd send you a quick cheers for checking out some What Culture goodness today, and if you like what you see, then go and tap on that subscribe button, you lovely person. Number 5. The Revival get goofy. It is fascinating to imagine where FTR would be today had they decided to stay put in Vince McMahon's ridiculous sports entertainment universe. Well, I say imagine, thanks to a number of ridiculous images leaked online after the unit were finally granted their WWE releases, folks don't really have to. Said photos showed off Cash Wheeler and Dax Harwood sporting a couple of absolutely outrageous outfits, complete with shatter machine chains and multicolored top hats. And had Vince McMahon decided to really put the two through hell in the final days of their WWE run, the future AEW World Tag Team Champions would have likely been seen dancing around arenas in the garish attires. These ugly threads would have come with a new comedy gimmick and direction for the top-class tag team, with the lads recalling on Talk Is Jericho Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard explaining how they love what the pair did during the infamous Usi Hot and back-shaving skits on WWE programming. And while Wheeler and Harwood did still professionally agree to do whatever they were told before their deal ended, the former even noted how he was okay with the way the idea was first described to them, with the unit donning these outfits out of spite. The decision was ultimately made to pull them from TV a few days later. And so, both themselves and WWE fans were saved from the dreadful visual of them going all goofy shatter machine on the main roster before their exit in April 2020. Number 4. Ivars, Vikings only dating website. Years before being presented as more of an unstoppable monster on Raw, this Viking Ivar was stuck in a rather bizarre comedy feud with the Street Profits in the early stages of the pandemic. For those who have understandably buried memories of that surreal period deep down within, the Viking Raiders and Street Profits collided in a number of silly competitions, golfing, bowling, and axe throwing with their rivals in the Anything You Can Do, We Can Do Better series. And it was during those absurd segments when various ladies began giving the big bad Viking the eye, and telling poor old Eric he wasn't their type. Had COVID-era WWE not seen plans constantly changing, however, that ladies' man character would eventually lead to Ivar hilariously setting up his own dating site, according to former WWE writer Chris Dunn. What is he like, eh? The website would have gone by the name of Vikings Mingle, staying clear of the Vikings only idea that sounded a little too similar to OnlyFans. But in the end, this odd dating site storyline addition to an already pretty unwanted comedy character was mercifully dropped before it could reach the screen. It did bizarrely spend a few weeks sitting in the scripts though. Now let's just go back to forgetting this whole thing ever happened. Number 3. Justin Bieber takes on Bray Wyatt. Back when the late Bray Wyatt was terrorizing WWE as the leader of the Wyatt family in 2014, there was talk behind the scenes of a specific celebrity dropping in to help a team of babyfaces conquer that then threesome at SummerSlam. According to former WWE writer Kevin Eck, not only would a then quite divisive teen pop star sensation by the name name of Justin Bieber have been brought in for the biggest party of the summer, Biebs, John Cena, and Big Show would have gone over Wyatt and his pals at the PLE. And if fans inevitably booed this horrendous booking decision, the plan was simply to have Cena deliver an attitude adjustment to the cocky singer to send folks home with a smile on their face. Thankfully, WWE weren't able to reach an agreement with Bieber before the Big Four show, and this no doubt infuriating celeb cameo was scrapped in favor of Cena taking an iconic trip to Suplex City and Wyatt defeating Chris Jericho instead. Number 2, a white wrestler hunts Reggie. You'd be forgiven for assuming that a storyline involving a white Australian performer hunting a black member of the WWE roster each and every week was something allegedly pitched during the height of the often quite racist Attitude Era. But you'd sadly be wrong. This idea was actually one of the many revealed during a recent lawsuit made against WWE by former writer Brittany Abrahams, with it being said that there was once a storyline discussed involving Reggie, NXT Scripps, being hunted by a crocodile hunter gimmicked Shane Thorne before escaping repeatedly. This was simply one of the horrendous and deeply racist storyline ideas allegedly thrown around backstage during Abrahams' time with the company. It was also noted in the lawsuit how another idea that would have seen Mansoor reveal himself as the mastermind behind the 9/11 terrorist attacks during a storyline with Aaliyah and Angel Gaza was allegedly pitched too. If all true, thank Christ someone had the sense to know that all of the above was and will never be anything other than hugely racist and not the sort of stuff that should be showing up on WWE TV today, or ever. Number 1, Lance Storm is Eric Bischoff's illegitimate son. Judging from the way former WCW and WWE worker Lance Storm reacted to a certain Vince Russo's comments about modern-day wrestling not possessing enough focus on characters and story for his liking, it's safe to assume the one-time writer of WCW television will not be getting a Christmas card from the Storm household. After labeling the controversial figure as a complete moron in a post on X/Twitter, the former Intercontinental Champion would go on to defend WWE's recent Bloodline epic. And when talking to a fan later that same day about how he thinks his run in WCW would have turned out without someone like Johnny Ace being a big supporter of him behind the scenes, Storm noted 2 things. Firstly, Russo never saw anything in him, and he also had the deranged idea to have the Canadian be revealed as Eric Bischoff's illegitimate son. Storm would also explain on sitting ringside with David Penza how this was simply something Russo dreamt up on the spot during a contract negotiation with the company in 2000. Needless to say, the fact Bischoff was only 14 years older than the incoming Canadian would have resulted in this becoming yet another perplexing new Russo storyline to add to the collection. Thankfully, Bish put a stop to the silly idea, one inspired by the fact they both apparently boasted the same cocky look on their faces before Storm's first TV taping, rescuing him from yet another no doubt disastrous Russo storyline before it had any chance to properly begin. Did you enjoy this ditched wrestling storylines list? Well, check out this one about how wrestling mistakes and botches became storylines then if you like. Bye bye!